Jaya Gauranitai. Jaya Jagannatha, Jaya Jagannatha, Baladeva, Jaya Subhadra. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Mita Gop Premanandi. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajikacharya Stotra Kashi Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Abhay Chandra Ravinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajikacharya Stotra Kashi Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki. Ananta Kori Vaishnava Vrind Ki. नामचार्य शिला हरिदास ठाकुर की प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड की गोवर्धन की वृंदावन धाम की मथुरा धाम की शिमापुर धाम की जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की गंगा माई की यमुना माई की तुलसी देवी की Srila Prabhupada Transcendental Book Distribution Ki. Srila Prabhupada Transcendental Prasharam Distribution Ki. Nitai Gaur Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Shri Guru. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Thank you everyone. This morning's Bhagavatam class, we're reading from Canto 3, Chapter 22, titled The Marriage of Kadama Muni and Devahuti. Verse 31, that's on the board. Kushakashamayam barhir Astirya Bhagavan Manu Ayajadyagya Purusham Labdha Sthanam Yato Bhuvam Kushakashamayam barhir Astirya Bhagavan Manu Ayajadyagya Purusham Labdha Sthanam Yato Bhuvam Kushakashamayam barhir Astirya Bhagavan Manu Ayajadyagya Purusham Labdha Sthanam Yato Bhuvam. Word for word translation. Kushaha of kusha grass. Kasa and of kasa grass. Mayam made. Barihi a seat. Astirya having spread. Bhagavan the greatly fortunate. Manuhu Swayambhuva Manu. Ayajat worshipped. Yagya Purusham Lord Vishnu. Labdha had achieved. Sthanam the abode. Yataha from whom. Bhuvam the earth. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. Manu spread a seat of kushas and kashas and worshipped the Lord, the personality of Godhead by whose grace he had obtained the rule of the terrestrial group. Purport. Manu is the father of mankind, and therefore from Manu comes the word man, or in Sanskrit manushyaha. Those who are in a better position in the world, having sufficient wealth, should especially take lessons from Manu, who acknowledged his kingdom and opulence to be gifts from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus always engaged in devotional service. Similarly, the descendants of Manu, or human beings, especially those who are situated in a well-to-do condition, must consider that whatever riches they have are gifts from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Those riches should be utilized for the service of the Lord in sacrifices performed to please Him. That is the way of utilizing wealth and opulence. No one can achieve wealth, opulence, good birth, a beautiful body, or nice education without the mercy of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, those who are in possession of such valuable facilities must acknowledge their gratefulness to the Lord by worshipping Him and offering what they have received from Him. When such acknowledgement is given, either by a family, nation, or society, their abode becomes almost like Vaikuntha, and it becomes free from the operation of the threefold miseries of this material world. In the modern age, the mission of Krishna consciousness is for everyone to acknowledge the supremacy of Lord Krishna. Whatever one has in his possession must be considered a gift by the grace of the Lord. Everyone, therefore, should engage in devotional service through Krishna consciousness. If one wants to be happy and peaceful in his position, either as a householder or citizen or member of human society, one must promote devotional service for the pleasure of the Lord. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Santatam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vichakanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatirubhascha Kripa Sindhuba Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So this morning's verse is from Canto 3, chapter 22, number 31. I'll read the translation again. Manu spread a seat of kushas and kashas and worshipped the Lord, the personality of Godhead, by whose grace he had obtained the rule of the terrestrial globe. So this verse that we are reading today is a sort of a continuation from the verse yesterday that Toshan Krishna Prabhu spoke on, and towards the end of the purport in yesterday's verse, Srila Prabhupada writes, if something is done for sense gratification or any other purpose, it will be binding upon the worker. If one wants to be freed from the reaction of his work, he must perform everything for the satisfaction of Vishnu or Yagya. Yagya Purushaha. That's in today's verse, that's been expanded on. In the capital of Swayambhuva Manu Barhismati, these particular functions are being performed by the great sages and saintly persons. So we see here how Swayambhuva Manu, and in today's purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, Manu is the father of mankind, and therefore from Manu comes the word man, or in Sanskrit, Manushyaha. So one should take lessons from the father of mankind. And especially the emphasis of today's verse, or the purport here, is that those who are in sort of a better position in their material life, then they should, especially for them, they should take lessons from this personality, Swayambhuva Manu, how, and further verses that will come leading up till the end of the chapter, that how Swayambhuva Manu was fully engaged in devotional service. So I was remembering as I was reading this verse, prominent personalities today. So we see a striking contrast between Swayambhuva Manu and the personality that we see in the world today. Once John Paul Getty, has everyone heard of John Paul Getty? This is in the 70s. He was asked, when you're alone, so he was the most, one of the most accomplished industrialists of the 1970s and obviously of this century. When they asked him, when you're alone, what do you think? What comes to your mind? Because he was obviously the most successful person. And he said, then he didn't respond. It seemed like he was in deep thought. Then they asked him again, when you're alone, what do you think? And he just had a one-word answer. More. More. It's someone who has everything in this world is saying more. So this is the consciousness and the mentality of people that are so absorbed in material consciousness. My Guru Maharaj once said that when he was with Srila Prabhupada in India, obviously the approach that Srila Prabhupada took in India, especially when he went back in the 70s to establish Mayapur, Vrindavan and Juhu, he said, Maharaj was saying that he would approach many many famous and prominent people in society, industrialists, and obviously try to enlist them as life members. But obviously, leading up to that would be that he would try and organize programs with them for Srila Prabhupada to come and speak. So, while he's organizing all of that, he would actually ask the host, what would you want Srila Prabhupada to speak on? So he was actually, I can't remember exactly, but I believe it was the Birlas that he approached. And, he said, what would you like? So there were a list of topics that that were being discussed, and the topic that the Birlas, I believe that's who they are, were they put forward the topic, how to be more successful. And when Maharaj was looking at the list of invites that were, that would be attending the program, he saw all these, industrialists, entrepreneurs, all these people, obviously in the 70s, and that were actually that actually dominated, the scene at that time. They were all to be attending this talk by Srila Prabhupada. He said all of them were successful in every regard. They had achieved everything that they wanted, and they chose this topic, how to be more successful. So Srila Prabhupada was, asked to speak on this topic, and when Srila Prabhupada went to their home or wherever this gathering was meant to happen, they said, when Srila Prabhupada started speaking, Srila Prabhupada started speaking on, anyone wants to take a guess, what verse, what did he start speaking on, how to be more successful? 9.13. And what's that verse? Mahatmanastu mam partha daivim prakritim ashritaha bhajantim ananya manaso natva bhutadim avyayam. O son of Pritha, those who are not deluded, the great souls, are under the protection of the divine nature. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible. So Srila Prabhupada, I won't be able to discuss the whole lecture here, but Maharaj was saying that Srila Prabhupada emphasized to them that success means to transfer ourselves from the material energy to the spiritual energy. And how does that actually happen? It's answered in the next verse in chapter 9. That was what I just said was 9.13. In 9.14 is Satatam Kirtayanto Mam Yatanta Chadridavrataha Namasyantas Chamam Bhaktya Nitya Yukta Upashade. Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me. These great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. So Srila Prabhupada was, and Maharaj was saying it was so touching because Srila Prabhupada was in his true humility, was just begging them, please chant Hare Krishna. Please make Krishna as the center of your life. Please add Krishna to whatever you do. That's my only request. I'm not here for your money. I'm not here for anything else. Please. And everyone in the audience were actually, even though they came from such materially prestigious positions, but they could truly, their hearts were melted by Srila Prabhupada's humility, and as a result of that, they also took up this process of Krishna consciousness. So the theme is again that in order to be successful, one needs to transfer from the material energy to the spiritual energy. So here, what we are being discussing, or what we're seeing, is the life of Swayambhuva Manu. And obviously in the Bhagavatam, we see Swayambhuva Manu in the later verses, how it describes that he's surrounded by such opulence. And similarly, in the 4th canto, we see Dhruva Maharaj again being awarded such a, he's awarded residence in Polestar. He's been, he'll be there until the end of his life, till, he goes back to Godhead. And we also see in the 7th canto a similar situation happening with Prahlad Maharaj. So these examples are there in the Bhagavatam. But how do these personalities live their life? Right? We see, a lot of times, especially coming, at least for myself, coming from the material conditioned background, yes, I see that, in the Bhagavatam there are stories of people who are being, in one sense, they're achieving all this opulence, they're achieving this favor or this grace from the Lord, but actually how are they living their life? The answer is that they are controlling their mind and the senses. And then we find a reference in the Nectar of Instruction, text 1, Vacho Vegam, Manasa Krodha Vegam, Jiva Vegam, Udaru Prashta Vegam, Etan Vegan Yuvisha Heta Dhira, Swarvam Apimam Pritivam Shashishyat. A sober person who can tolerate the urge to speak, the mind's demands, the actions of anger, and the urges of the tongue, belly, and genitals is qualified to make disciples all over the world. So these personalities are taking on austerities. Austerities to please Krishna. Lately, I've been fortunate enough to hear some lectures by His Holiness Tamal Krishna Maharaj. And in one lecture that's on YouTube, where he's actually, the title of the lecture is Sacrifice is the Price You Pay for Advancing in Krishna Consciousness. And in that I believe it's an audio lecture, so we can't really see who's in the audience, but from what it looks like, it's speaking to a group of grihastas. And in that, he is urging everyone there that please take to the austerities of Krishna consciousness, because that's what will actually help you advance in our Krishna consciousness. And he said, for example, whatever you do as grihastas, we have our obligations, we have our duties, but try to give Krishna to others. And Toshan Krishna Prabhu yesterday was making this point that this culture, Varnashram Dharma, is actually a giving culture. We give. And Maharaj was describing that, any free time that we have, that we actually take that as an opportunity to give to others. So he was saying, he was expressing to grihastas, you have your family, weekends, you should just go out, try to find time, try to find a place that's actually populated. You go there, it doesn't have to be very, very elaborate. Just on your car itself, if you're not getting a table, just on your car, put up a nice cloth, put up a nice diorama, put up nice books for display. You, along with your wife and children, dress up nicely and just approach people. Just do that. And he said, you'll see that whatever time you spend, 2-3 hours, will be so nourishing. He's like, in contrast to that, if we were to just go and you go to the beach, what would we do at the most? And Maharaj is obviously speaking in the 80s. He's saying we'll take out a Polaroid camera and take a photo of it. And the memory will only be for as long as the photo is lying around us. But the experience of us even reaching out to someone, it doesn't matter how many take a book, how many take, whatever we're distributing, prasadam, have some Simply Wonderfuls, whatever it is. But that experience will nourish us so much. It will give us such a taste of Krishna consciousness that we'll want to do more and more. And he said, after all that is done, then go to the beach. There is no restriction as that. Then you go to the beach. But he's saying, likewise, we have to become experts in dealing with material energy. And who are the best examples of dealing with the material energy or overcoming the temptation of material energy are the 6 Goswamis. You see that their bodily needs are very, very minimal. In fact, I was once hearing His Grace Shamsundar Prabhu, Srila Prabhupada disciple, say this, that when he was serving Srila Prabhupada, when he was Srila Prabhupada's personal servant, he doesn't recall a time where actually what we would call sound sleep, a lot of times we use this word, we had sound sleep, we had peaceful night's sleep, that he never recalls Srila Prabhupada even having that. It would just be obviously all that is actually documented, but he never recalled Srila Prabhupada sleeping more than 2 to 3 hours at the most, if it would be, or if we just break it up. But every moment of his time was actually engaged in giving to others. And we also see that towards the very end of Srila Prabhupada's manifest pastimes, when he's laying down on, in Vrindavan, just a few seconds before he's departing his physical body, he's actually speaking the Bhagavatam. So these personalities, they give. Every moment that they have, they give. So we give our time. And once I was hearing, I believe, Ganesham Prabhu giving a seminar. So when he was doing the scripture study classes, and he said that when we are practicing Krishna consciousness, gradually, if we are cultivating a Krishna consciousness diligently, 2 things are naturally going to happen. One is that we will lose taste for material enjoyment, and the other is attraction, attachment to Krishna. These two things will happen simultaneously. It's bound to happen if we are cultivating Krishna consciousness diligently and under the guidance of our spiritual master and in the association of devotees. So, as Tamakrisha Maharaj was describing, the Goswamis, that's the lifestyle that they basically are living, that every moment of their time is actually spent in deepening their Krishna consciousness. Now, coming back to Swayambhuva Manu today, I just wanted to take a few moments describing Swayambhuva Manu, and in the next verses you'll see how he's actually fully engaged in devotional service. In the 8th canto, the very first chapter, we find there's a chapter called Description of the Universal Management, and in there is described how Swayambhuva Manu, obviously we hear of Swayambhuva Manu giving away his daughter Devahuti in marriage, but he also has another daughter. Do you know his other daughter's name? Akuti. So Akuti and Devahuti. Devahuti married Kardama Muni, which gave birth to, Lord Kapila appeared from that, and through Akuti came Yagyamurti. So it's described in the 8th canto. So in the 8th canto, after, now it's obviously this passage here in the last chapter of this, in the last few verses of this chapter will describe how Swayambhuva Manu detached himself from family life and went to the forest to practice austerities and deepening his Krishna consciousness. In the 8th canto is described when he actually does go to the forest and when he's actually with us, which is actually would be considered as him staying in his Vanaprastha ashram. So it's described that he's actually meditating, and the very first verse that he actually describes there is, which would be considered as Swayambhuva Manu's prayers. Here is it is Canto 8, Chapter 1, verse number 7. Let me just pull that up. Couldn't save it on my phone. Sorry, text number 9, 819. And he says in that, the Supreme Living Being has created this material world of animation. It is not that he was created by this material world. When everything is silent, the Supreme Being stays awake as a witness. The living entity does not know him, but he knows everything. And interestingly, because I was drawn to this because in this verse, there's a word used, animation, and the Sanskrit for this is chetayate. So we see in the 15th chapter of the Gita, how the 15th chapter starts off by saying how this material world is like a reflection of the spiritual world. And what we see in this material world, what the analogy that's given is like a banyan tree that has its branches downwards and its roots upwards. And we don't see anything in this material world that actually describes this, where we see the roots facing upward and the branches facing down. But we see it by the banks of a river, the reflection of the material, of this tree here. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada beautifully writes us that the spiritual world, the material world is a reflection of the spiritual world, and similarly, in this material world, everything is based, which is a reflection of the spiritual world, it's based on desire. So, we are here because we have a desire to be the controllers. We want to enjoy independent of Krishna. So that's why we are given this world of animation. Just for us to be false proprietors or to be false enjoyers. Until the time when we come in touch with a sadhu, like Srila Prabhupada, and devotees who are actually helping us cut this knot of material existence. So again, when I was listening to Tamakrisha Maharaj on my way here today, and he was speaking on this, that in today's day and age, people hate sadhus. Sadhus are hated because sadhus are considered dangerous because they cut this ahankara, they cut this knot of material attachment. In fact, he was saying when he was in Hong Kong, there was a saying that when he would be spending time in Hong Kong, when he would be out meeting with people, they would say that if a Chinese man meets a monk on the streets, that means his bad fortune has come about. So that means today I'll have a bad day. That's a famous saying in the Chinese folklore, especially in Hong Kong. Obviously, but in Chaitanya Bhagavat we see that if we meet a sadhu, then our good fortune comes about. So, because a sadhu helps us cut our material attachments, that's considered to be our greatest fortune. In fact, I'm remembering now one of Maharaj's disciples was saying that in Hong Kong, because obviously we can picture how it would have been when if someone meets a monk, then it's considered to be that they're bringing on bad fortune. So what they would do, what the devotees would do, is instead of dressing up as traditional attire, they would actually dress up in suits, and basically they would dress up professionally. They would actually go into offices, and when they would go to certain offices, what they would do, they would basically pull out their questionnaire, and the questionnaire would have questions like, do you believe in life on other planets? Have you had any experience with extraterrestrial beings? Do you believe in life after death? I'm paraphrasing some of the questions that were on the questionnaire, and anyone they would basically say, please write down your contact details here. So people would put down their contact details, and whatever were the answers, then guess what? Devotees would actually call them up and have programs that way. So that was the way they would actually go and cultivate different people, and obviously get, without being outwardly shown as belonging to a certain tradition or to a certain form of religious institution. So this is the way that sadhus are actually going door to door, begging, please give up attachments and take to chanting Hare Krishna. So that was Swayambhuva Manu. We find another example in the Bhagavatam, and that is of Prahlad Maharaj. Interestingly enough, Prahlad Maharaj, obviously, we all know the glories of Prahlad Maharaj, how he's actually, in whatever situation he was put in by his father, he was always fixed in, smaranam, in his remembrance of the Lord. And later on, when the Lord appears and kills his father, and I believe a few months ago when His Holiness Devamrita Swami was here, we were very fortunate because to hear from him on the eve of Narasimha Chaturdasi, he was describing it, and he was saying that how when Narasimha Dev killed Hiranyakashipu, he was garlanded, with his intestines, and Maharaj was saying that he looked at the ladies and said, how would you like to be garlanded with intestines? How are you keen on that? And he said, Narasimha Dev was actually garlanded with intestines, and there everyone would just so fearful of the whole situation. How would because the Lord was seen in such an angry mood, and Prahlad Maharaj then goes to him, and Prahlad Maharaj is offering prayers. Obviously, this has been described in the 7th canto. The chapter is called Prahlad pacifies the Lord with prayers. And in that, Prahlad Maharaj says that I don't fear this form of yours. And now again, what I'll get to is what he is actually fearful of. Now, bear in mind, he was put through all these atrocities. His father tried to kill him in so many different ways. He was being tormented by all these weapons, by all these different demons. He's not fearful of that. What is he fearful of? He tells the Lord, I'm fearful of materialistic association. Now, how many of us can say that we are fearful of materialistic association. If I look at myself, practically 8 hours of my day, at least, are with people who are actually materially motivated. When I go to work, what people are speaking about is just mundane things. If it's not anything related to them, then it's all about sports. It's all about, all these impressions that, that are being bombarded upon, my consciousness, or, even for those who actually go to work. Prahlad Maharaj is saying, I'm fearful of that association. That's what he's fearful of more than someone who's actually trying to kill him. And how worse can it be if it's his own father? So we see that these personalities are actually fearful of material association, yes, but they are taking shelter of the spiritual energy, which is actually, as Krishna described in the Bhagavad Gita, param drishtva nivartate, cultivating a higher taste. Once, when Srila Prabhupada was, I believe, in London, he gave a class, and he said, all you people, I don't remember this bit, but word to word, but he says, you will all fall down, or you're all, you will all fall down, but I'll never fall down, something to that extent. And a few minutes later, after the class was done, or maybe even the next day, devotees saw that Srila Prabhupada was in front of the deities. I'm not sure if it was Radha London Ishwara or Radha Gokulan. I can't remember who, But Srila Prabhupada was actually seen right in front of the deities and praying very intensely. And after all that was done, they asked Srila Prabhupada that, Srila Prabhupada, what were you praying for? And he said that, I was praying to the Lord to please always protect me, never help me fall. And so how many, at least for myself, when I'm going out in the workplace, when I'm going out to, to carry out my duties, how fearful am I of that association? Because ultimately that's what I'm actually dealing with day in and day out. So for us as devotees, all of us, we need to understand that our shelter is Shri Radha Gopinath, Shri Gaurnitai, Jagannath Baldev Subhadra, and Srila Prabhupada, and these Sangha of devotees that we have. So it's all dependent on association and how we best associate. Now, obviously, when we speak of association with materialists, we don't take that association, but we rather give association. So Maharaj again was actually describing that we find opportunities where we can give. And in the later verses, we'll see in this chapter that it is not that when one takes to Krishna consciousness that the material miseries vanish. It's just that they don't affect us in that way. Just this morning, as I woke up, on my email, there was an email by His Grace Vijay Prabhu. Everyone knows Vijay Prabhu, the ISKCON book distribution minister. And he said, book distribution nectar from Ukraine, the country that's actually war-torn at the moment. And he said that this devotee, I think it's Ekanath Das, it's on that email, if you're actually subscribed to it, you'll see. And he also actually publishes it on Dandavats. And he said that this devotee was actually, he said that I go out on books every day. One day he got a free ride from the bus driver and he gave them a book. And the very next day it happened to be that the same driver came and said, oh, thank you so much. I felt like my life had no meaning, but after reading the book, now my life is actually transformed. 2 days later, he met a small boy in a local market. And the boy asked him, what will this book teach me? And he asked the boy, what do you like to do? What do you want to do? What's your aspiration? He's like, I want to travel. And this devotee said, this book will help you travel deep into yourself. And the boy never said anything, so this Prabhu just prayed to the Super Soul, please, if you think, please, inspire this boy from within. The next day, he saw, when he was in the market, he heard a tap on his back, and it was the same boy. He said, please give me the book that you were telling me. And he took the book and gave a donation. Sometime later, he came across another man who was actually, you can say, I think in Australia you call it busking. So, they would actually stay at different, especially if you go to some train stations, you'll find at times some people just playing some music, playing the guitar and people giving them whatever donations. But this person, in addition to playing music, he would also play pranks on people just to, lighten up the mood, so he would choose 2 or 3 people like that, and then he would just play pranks on them. And this devotee saw him, and he just said, why don't you come with me? I'm trying to give this knowledge to people which will make them happy eternally. He's like, oh, okay, that's great. Let me come along. So he came along, and then guess what happens? This person who was actually, play pranks on people, he did what he did, and in terms of, whatever people would give him, he said, no, don't give me. Give it to this man here. He has some knowledge. So in that way, he helped with book distribution. So Sankirtan Yagya is like Toshan Prabhu was telling us, Sankirtan Yagya is the fire in which everything can be sacrificed. Usually in a traditional Yagya, we see just rice, fire, grains, ghee, all those is what being sacrificed. But in the Sankirtan Yagya, everything is sacrificed. So we should rather be those, our desire should be that we actually please or we offer the fruits of our activities to Shri Radha Gopinath and the Lordships. And not be, as I was again listening to Tamakrishna Maharaj was saying that, don't be, we follow a lot of time. He said, today in India, Varnashram is being criticized because it is Varnashram minus Krishna. And he said you'll find a lot of these pious Indian families, industrialists, whatever it is. Yes, they are actually contributing to the building of temples. They are, sometimes you'll see also in their own family name, they'll actually build temples. And actually, it is karma yoga. They're using whatever they have. However, their intention is not the same as a devotee, because the intention is to either, because they want to give so that they can live happily in this life. They want to be sure that, and they've read scripture, they understand that if they give in this lifetime, then this will not only help this generation, but in future generations as well. And they believe or they understand that if we were to give this now, then we'll obviously enjoy now, but we can also enjoy in a future lives or even have residence on a higher planet. So that's their understanding. But the moment we add Krishna to everything, we add Krishna to, as we see in the 5th chapter of the Gita, Bhoktaram Yagyatapasam Sarva Loka Maheshwaram. When Krishna is the beneficiary of all the sacrifices, then life becomes blissful. So how we see in Ukraine, Vijay Prabhu sharing these nectarian stories, and there are so many such stories there, that even though the country is war-torn, there's upheaval, there's turmoil everywhere, but devotees are enthusiastic because they're seeing this as a perfect opportunity to give Krishna to everyone. So that's what these personalities are showing us, personalities such as Swayambhuva Manu, Prahlad Maharaj, Dhruva Maharaj, and countless personalities in the Bhagavatam. So our tradition is a living tradition. We are fortunate to be a part of this parampara, which is being handed down to us, which is being carried through the disciplic succession, which are actually giving us a live example of how one should live their life. We have Srila Prabhupada, we have a Guru Varga, and we have all you wonderful devotees here who are actually day in, day out showing us the true adventure that one should be living for. So I'll end here if anyone has any question or reflection. Okay. Thank you so much. Grantra Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Ita Go Premanandi, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki.